What's going on, everybody? Cleopus Tech here, coming back at you with another video. In this video, we're going to be doing a quick comparison between the TCL 40XL and the TCL 30XL. Now, as the name implies, the TCL 40XL is the successor to last year's TCL 30XL, so I'm going to be going over the similarities and differences between the two to give you an idea of what's changed and whether or not the TCL 40XL is a worthy upgrade. Now, as always, if you end up wanting to learn more about either phone individually, be sure to check out the description, where I am linking to several other videos about them, as well as some information about pricing, availability, and some of my favorite smartphone accessories. But with that being said, let's get into it. So with the TCL 40XL, we're getting a 6.75-inch 90Hz IPS LCD display with a 720p resolution, a PPI of 260, and a 20:9 aspect ratio. With the TCL 30XL, we're getting a 6.82-inch LCD display with a 720p resolution, a PPI of 270, and a 20.5:9 aspect ratio. So in general, these displays are really similar. Unfortunately, they're both 720p, so even though they're not really bad per se, if you're really consuming a lot of content, especially stuff like videos for example, where the image quality is a bit more important, you probably won't get the best experience, especially if you're doing that kind of thing all the time. So if maybe watching videos or playing games is one of the main things you're doing with your phone, then I definitely would recommend going for something that has a 1080p resolution instead. But for more casual, occasional use, the displays here do look at least decent, and at least with the TCL 40XL, we are getting that 90Hz refresh rate, which is going to make the movement on the screen a bit faster and smoother, so the phone in general is going to be a bit more premium to use. But all in all, not really a huge difference. The other difference here is that with the TCL 30XL at 6.82 inches versus again 6.75 with the 40XL, the 30XL is a tiny bit larger, but honestly the difference is really not huge, and at 6.75 inches, the TCL 40XL is definitely not small either. So in general, when it comes to the display, if you want a larger display between the two, the TCL 30XL will have a slight advantage, but aside from that, I feel like you're going to get the same experience regardless. Now for storage, with the TCL 40XL, we're getting 256GB of internal storage with microSD card expansion, and with the TCL 30XL, we're getting 64 with microSD card expansion as well. So quite a jump here, with the TCL 40XL having quadruple the storage of the 30XL. So if you really do care about storage, if that's more of an important thing for you, I would definitely go with the TCL 40XL. But keep in mind, even at this point in 2023, while it's definitely not the best, for a really affordable entry-level phone, 64GB, while again not being a lot, is definitely at least acceptable. So if you're more of a light user, you should at least get by with this phone. But again, 256GB, especially for a phone like this, is definitely impressive. So if storage is important to you, the TCL 40XL will be a great choice. For security features, both phones have Face Unlock, and they both have fingerprint scanners. With the TCL 40XL, it's right here on the power key, and with the TCL 30XL, it's here on the back. But starting with the 40XL, let's give them a try. There we go, one more time. And there we go. And now for the TCL 30XL. There we go, one more time. And there we go. So as you can see, both fingerprint scanners worked real well. No issues at all. And again, remember, both phones do have Face Unlock too, so if you want to use that instead, you always can. Now taking a look at the camera setups here, with the TCL 40XL, up front, we got a water drop notch for the selfie camera. This camera is 8 megapixels. Then on the back, we got a triple camera setup with a 50 megapixel main camera, a 2 megapixel macro camera, and a 2 megapixel depth sensing camera. With the TCL 30XL, up front, we got another water drop notch here. This camera is 13 megapixels. Then on the back, we got a quad camera setup with a 50 megapixel main camera, a 5 megapixel ultra wide camera, a 2 megapixel macro camera, and a 2 megapixel depth sensing camera. And then for video, both phones have a max recording quality of 1080p in both the rear and front cameras, so no 4K here, but considering these are really entry-level phones, I'm really not surprised. Now, as far as the overall camera setups go, I do feel like with the TCL 40XL, it's kind of a downgrade since unfortunately, again, we're not getting an ultra-wide camera here, whereas the TCL 30XL does actually have one, so if that feature is important to you, definitely keep this in mind. But aside from this, when it comes to regular photos, I do think both phones are pretty good for what they are. Now for the RAM and processor, with the TCL 40XL, we're getting 6GB of RAM with the MediaTek Helio G37 processor, and with the TCL 30XL, we're getting 6GB of RAM here as well with the MediaTek Helio A25. Now, in general, I feel like these phones are definitely not the fastest. And when it comes to which one is faster between the two, there's really not going to be a huge difference. So if you maybe have the TCL 30XL right now and you're expecting some kind of performance upgrade, definitely keep in mind the TCL 40XL is really not much faster, if at all. And in general, with these phones, considering they are really entry-level devices, this is probably not going to come as a surprise. But if you are really going to be on your device a lot, especially doing more demanding activities, you will want to get something else because they're really not the fastest phones out there. But at the same time, for more basic activities like occasional web browsing, social media use, streaming content like videos and music and stuff like that, they will at least get the job done. Now I ran a benchmark test here on each phone using Geekbench 6, and here are the results I got. So as you can see here, the TCL 40XL does have a slight advantage, but honestly in real life when you're actually using these phones, you're really not going to see a huge difference. So again, if you are really expecting any kind of performance upgrade, or if you're really just trying to decide which phone to get, and you are going to be on your device a bit more, then I would definitely recommend getting something a bit higher end and a bit faster in general, maybe some kind of 5G phone or something like that, because in that case, when it comes to the performance, you will most likely be a bit disappointed. But again, for everyday casual use, if you're not really doing a ton on your phone and you really just need something for the basics, either phone here will be perfectly fine. And again, I feel like there's really not a huge performance difference between them. Now for the batteries, really nothing at all has changed. Both phones have 5,000 mAh batteries, also supporting 18-watt fast charging, but definitely great batteries here. With a 5,000 mAh battery, that is a really large battery, so you can expect to get plenty of life per charge. And then down the road as the batteries degrade, which all batteries do, with these ones you're not going to notice it nearly as quickly as you would with a much smaller battery. So if you like to get one phone and keep it for a longer time without having to replace it, and you are again looking for a more basic device, then either phone here will be a great choice for that. Now for the software, with the TCL 40XL, we are getting Android 13, whereas with the TCL 40XL, unfortunately this phone does only have Android 12. Now this is really not surprising, and considering these are super low-end devices, they're probably really only meant to be replaced every year. So in the long term, I don't imagine either phone is going to get amazing software support, but if you do want the latest version of Android right now, the 40XL will have an advantage. But again, keep in mind Android 14 is coming out in a few months, and like I said, I feel like the TCL 40XL probably won't have the best software support either. So if you are expecting to get Android 14, I mean, it could happen, but I probably wouldn't count on it. So in that case, you might not want to get either of these phones, but if you do just want a slightly newer software but you don't really care about having the best, the 40XL will have an advantage here. And also keep in mind, unfortunately neither phone here has NFC, so if you like to use tap and pay, you will want to get something else. Now, I'm kind of conflicted on this because on one hand, like I've been saying throughout this video, these are really affordable phones, so you can really only expect so much. But at the same time, I mean, NFC is such a common feature these days. It is the main technology behind tap and pay. So if you want to use that feature, you will need NFC, and considering that at this point, you can go into pretty much any store and they're going to have some kind of tap and pay. Having a phone that doesn't have the capability is definitely disappointing. So just keep in mind, again, if you do like to make mobile contactless payments, you will want to get something else. But if you don't care about that feature, then this probably isn't a big deal. But in conclusion, which of these phones is better? Now, honestly, I usually don't say this in comparisons, but I feel like when it comes to these phones, it's really pretty much the same thing. Sure, on one hand, the TCL 30XL is a tiny bit larger and it does have an ultra-wide camera, and the TCL 40XL has quite a bit more storage, and Android 13 versus Android 12. And I guess it is a little bit faster too, although again, when I'm actually using the phones, I don't really see it. But at the end of the day, I feel like most people considering these phones are probably not going to be getting the TCL 30XL, since after all, I feel like the 40XL is basically just a continuation of it. So in general, on one hand, if you currently have the TCL 30XL and you're considering upgrading, I would definitely get something better than the 40XL, because really the main significant differences here are, one, the storage. So yeah, 256 versus 64 is a pretty big difference. And then Android 13 versus Android 12, that is something to consider too. But at the end of the day, I feel like if you have the TCL 30XL already and you want to upgrade to something that has more storage and a newer software, if you're going out of your way to get a new phone anyway, I feel like in most cases, you can easily do better than the TCL 40XL. But at the same time, if you don't have either of these phones, and you are looking for a really affordable, more basic device for more casual, light use, I do think in that case, the TCL 40XL is at least worth considering. But even though the 30XL does have an ultra-wide camera, and it is a pretty decent phone all things considered, I feel like at this point, if you don't have either of these phones, I would go with the 40XL just because it is newer, it does have Android 13, which is not going to be quite outdated for a little while, and it does have quite a bit of storage, which for a phone you can get for well under $200. This is pretty impressive. But this concludes my comparison between the TCL 40XL and the TCL 30XL. Again, if you want to learn more about either phone individually, definitely check out the description, where I am linking to several other videos about them, as well as some information about pricing, availability, and some of my favorite smartphone accessories. But that's it for this video. If you enjoyed it and found it useful, be sure to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to follow Kalipis Tech on Twitter and Instagram. And as always, I will see you in the next video.